Thank you. Good morning. So I drove here this morning. I got up at 3 o'clock. I drove from Maryland to here. I thought, I'm feeling I'm aging, but in my mind, I'm still young, you know? So I said, oh God, I'm feeling sleepy now. I had to wake myself up. So I think, as Firoz mentioned, control release, bioavailability enhancement, continuous manufacturing, the juxtaposition of these topics really is saying a lot, because that's where we are moving. So in that sense, when we started talking about a keynote, what I thought I'll do is distill out something common across these topics. Flow chemistry. I thought I had retired, but I got pulled back into an emergency effort to some essential drugs that President Trump signed yesterday, so the HARPA project. So I'm back again. I thought I retired into 2020. I've retired in 2012. I retired in 2017. I retired in 2020 from Nifty. And now I'm back again, looks like. So now we are in trouble. I think the decoupling is occurring very quickly. I think my message to the White House yesterday was helping them to think through this decoupling and bringing back are not at the same timeline. And I think we will go through significant hiccups, challenges, because I used to manage the national stockpile while I was at US FDA. It doesn't even serve Washington, D.C. We don't even have stockpiles, right? So a few years ago, we started building with significant grants, stockpiling a number of essential drugs, but we are underestimating the scale of the challenge that we are facing. So with that in the background, I thought from intermittent to flow, smart data integrity lessons, common sense driving pharma manufacturing evolution, I thought, let's talk about what does flow mean within us. Flow is a peak performance, right? When you are in the state of flow, from a psychological perspective, you are in peak performance. I think that's what happens. If you have a manufacturing process which is beautifully running, like that flow and the psychological flow is essentially the same outcome in some sense. And intermittent is, you can't have an intermittent supply, but that's what we struggle with. And because of that intermittent supply, what I wanted to say that is much of the data integrity challenges stem from that. I thought I had left pharma when I moved from Novartis to Philip Morris. I was enjoying smoking my Marlboros in Switzerland. I really did. Neuchâtel, Switzerland. I was a resident of Neuchâtel, Switzerland. So 2012, I was going to retire because they said I didn't have to work after what I did for Philip Morris. I thought I'm coming back to US. But then I got pulled back into India. I'm from India. I did my pharmacy there and then came here for my advanced degrees. So I was reconnecting with India after 30 years at that point. So 2012, I'm going to take that case example for this talk. That's what I'm just, this Indian company is going gung-ho. I'm not going to name it. The stock price is going up, number 3 company. 6 months, I'm the chief scientific officer and president. My vice president comes and says, sir, we have never manufactured it. Our batch records are manufactured there. They say, there's no connection. I said, what? Not a single document is authentic. I talked to the chairman, why the hell did you hire me? Let's correct this. I said, what are you talking about? Your colleagues have been inspecting us for 10 years. They don't have a problem. Why do you have a problem? I said, I have a problem. So I resigned, came back. I went into depression. I said, Dr. Woodcock, this is 2013. Dr. Woodcock calls me, come back to FDA now. So she was creating the Office of Pharmaceutical Quality, come back to FDA. I spent a week at FDA going through that. I said, Janet, all the documents are made up. Oh, I know, what can we do? I said, I didn't know that. And Office of Compliance, Rick Friedman said, hey, you want to whistleblow? You'll get $69 million. I said, I don't want your money. I just want to be left alone with this. What is this? So that was my 2013. I was into depression. I said, forget it. I'm coming back again to doing something different now. So that's the background to this. So the flow is intermittent to flow from depression to doing something positive. But at the same time, I have to tell you, we are in a deep, dark place right now, okay? I joined FDA. I left a tenured position, was a professor at the University of Cincinnati, because Office of Pharmaceutical Science was being formed to come out from the darkness of the generic drug scandal. So I'm talking about 35 years ago. The darkness we are facing now is deeper than that. Okay? FDA, their response to COVID essentially has been scandalous to an exponential degree. You will not know that because most of people have not been deep into it. I got pulled into a number of investigations. I will not talk about that. But what I'm telling you is this. Generic drug scandal was a tiny scandal. Where we are now, it will destroy our system. We have to rebuild the system, okay? If you have read it carefully between the lines in New York Times, Janet Woodcock herself has apologized. She said she dropped the ball on this. So I'll leave it at that. But the generic drug scandal and the COVID scandal, essentially the same behaviors, same issues, human issues. That's where I'm coming from. So where we are, not only the credibility gap, but the financial crisis, the supply chain crisis, this is a convergence of crisis we're going to face. Next 6 months is where it'll all come together. All right? So this is the moment we are in. Trust is fragile. Why is common sense essential, especially now? Why then common sense is not so common? What I can tell you is you cannot have a logical discussion in Washington today. I'm not joking. I think when COVID made us all patients, okay? Now, you have to also know that I live in Frederick, Maryland, okay, next to Fort Detrick. So I'm surrounded by, so the director for Warp Speed lives in Frederick. So I've been deep into this. So I'm telling you where we are going is not a pleasant place, but we still have to provide the leadership to come out of this. And because we have to shoulder the responsibility, we have to lead way back, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So common sense is not so common because it depends on our initial conditions. We think, or our thinking is only a small part of our life. The subconscious mind is the dominant controlling factor, right? So how we are programmed from the age 3 to 6 years is different. Each is individual. And that controls our perception and so forth. So common sense often doesn't become, because Einstein said, because we are a collection of prejudices we have collected for since 16 years or 18 years that differentiates us. Although we may have the same scientific training and education and degrees and so forth, but this is what makes a difference. So how do we deal with that? And how does the FDA&C Act deal with it? It's a very simple way, okay? If you read the Food and Drug Cosmetic Acts after the Kaifa-Harris Amendment, 1962, or you look at 21 CFR 211.15, education, training, and experience. Okay, and experience. How do we learn from experience? How do we value that? According to the CFR 211. FDA is supposed to we all qualified based on scientific training, GMPs, education, training, and experience. FDA&C Act is scientific training and experience to make decisions fairly and responsibly. Those are the law. We have never enforced it. But let's enforce it for ourselves, is the point I'm making. All right, so pharmaceutical knowledge, trust, quality flow cannot be intermittent. We are in a post-truth world. Flow is how integrity is appraised. Because intuitively we know where to trust. Our intuitions may not always be right, but not being right is not a limiting factor. As long as we know, we learn that we were not right, how do we improve? That's the way to progressing. Why flow matters? Flow is not just movement, but a coherence of intent, evidence, and action. Really, that's where I'm going to take this discussion. And I'll pick one simple test we do for control release. We want to do formulation for bioavailability enhancement, dissolution test. Dissolution test is also required for continuous manufacturing. And I remember several years ago, J&J got the second approval for continuous manufacturing for the Puerto Rico plant. How did they deal with dissolution? Nightmare. Because FDA made the dissolution test the same old thing. After they had done the modeling and so forth, they come up with dissolution test is going to be this. That was a nightmare for them. So whether you do control release or not, dissolution is a headache that you will face. When you should not. But dissolution failures has a personal reflection is what I want to talk to you about. FDA cases reveal blind spots in how dissolution is understood. Measurement uncertainty and national security risks weren't just theoretical. I remember one situation. It was early in my career at FDA. I got an assignment. The New York district has shut down Wyeth laboratories. Make sure we don't have a shortage of Premarin tablets, right? So Premarin tablets were experiencing dissolution failures galore. I do a risk assessment with the clinician, so forth. There's no risk of this is a minor dissolution failure. I go to New York district from Washington. The New York district director slammed the door on my face. You are headquarters. You have nothing to do with this. You're encroaching on my authority. Right? I said, guy, we can't have this shortage. They've been making this for 60 years. What do you want them to do now? Validation. What do you mean validation? Well, they have to make 3 batches. Which 3 batches? So the problem is, shellac is it's an old formulation, 64-year-old formulation, 70-year-old formulation. You know, the recipe for shellac coating was, you have to cure it for 67 days after, and they don't know why. They've been doing it. I said, guys, this formulation was never designed to be a slow-release formulation. By accident it is. we imposed 2-point dissolution. It cannot meet the specification. So what do? The only way I could resolve that and keep the product is the senior VP for Wyeth reported to me on a weekly basis till they reformulated the entire. Did I solve the problem? No, I found a bureaucratic way to keep the product on the market. Did the quality improve? Did anything add? There was nothing added value. We wanted to shut down, we did that shutdown. But dissolution failures, I've seen dramatic failures, including where it was a national security issue. Here is an example of a national security issue. Our Marines in Liberia started coming down with malaria. They were on prophylactic mefloquine, right? So Congress asked CDC and FDA to investigate. So we collect samples from the Marines, send them to 2 most important FDA labs, St. Louis and Philadelphia. Those are the labs one would use to put people in jail if you wanted to have evidence for that. And they come to me with 2 different dissolution outcomes. Okay. I was a professor. I used to teach a graduate course in Cincinnati on drug release and in vitro in vivo correlation before I got to FDA, okay? I'm talking about 1995. This is before, this was 2001, 2, 3, around that time. So I'm asking the 2 labs, did you validate this method? Of course we did. They're looking at me as I'm crazy. I said, how did you validate this method? They started explaining the HPLC method they validated. I said, I don't care about HPLC. There's no error, hardly any error. How did you validate the dissolution method? Remember, I used to be a professor teaching this, and I'm asking this after many years. Oh, we didn't validate that. We calibrated that. All right. How do you calibrate that? Oh, we use the USB calibrator tablet. Who makes it at that time? Graduate students at University of Maryland. Huh? So that, you mean to say the quality assessment of the entire industry is based on the quality of the calibrator tablet? Yes. Because remember, total variability, which we measure at is variability in the product, variability in the measurement system, variability plus variability, and so forth, right? And graduates, and then tell me the damn calibrator tablet is unstable. It keeps changing, and sometimes and the acceptance range for the calibrator tablet, if you see, is huge. I said, wait a minute. The slow release, modified release dosage form guidance says plus minus 10%. That's how the FDA guide. Isn't that a disconnect? Oh, yes. Lucky for me, CDC stepped in before FDA, said, oh, there was a warning, and it's a non-adherence issue because suicidal tendencies happened, so people didn't. But I said, yes, I don't have to answer to Congress now. So we held a meeting, FDA advisory committee meeting, came up with a better mechanical calibration criteria, which is not based on the calibrator tablet, right? It's a money-making business for USP. Now, after years and years and years, I was at NIPT, 18 universities together, all part of the USP. The system is broken. Nothing. Whitewash. So we have a corrupt system, an absolutely corrupt system. All pharmacy colleges are members of that. They cannot change. They talk about science. They cannot correct errors that have existed from the very beginning. This is what our system is. I'm a grandfather now, so I have to be. So anyway, dissolution failures impact There are number 2 reasons for recalls in the US. Number 1 is impurity, stability, and so forth. But let me share with you an example, a real example. I've seen this example from academia, from FDA, from being inside the companies, right? So a heart medicine case that symbolizes deeper systemic crack. From policy to practice, what failed and why. I'll pick up a pharmacy announcement. What is going on with this heart medicine 2017? The reference product is toprol, metoprolol succinate. And when I left the FDA, I moved to Sandoz, but I was managing the biosimilar program. 2006, I'm in Sandoz. The small molecule is celebrating, they got an ANDA approval, right? They were so excited, they launched it without validation. I'm not joking. 2006, Sandoz goes under warning letters. I'm looking at it. And the next I'll show you, they're silently recalling it. So my first experience with Sandoz, without validation, warning letter. Vocart is another example. Dr. Reddy's is another example. So I've seen this from inside, right? Those companies. But I have also seen how FDA sets the specification. And I have also been responsible for modified release SUPAC from SUPAC MR. SUPAC MR was not a science-based guideline. We talk about it as science, but it was an opinion-based guideline. We built consensus. We never did research that challenged that. I remember, for modified release, the whole industry, FDA team, oh, we can't take metoprolol succinate for doing the research. Let's take metoprolol tartrate because it meets. Come on. How can I generalize that data to the rest of this? This was actually a discussion, right? Metoprolol tartrate was a hydrophilic matrix tablet, very simple. This is bead and complicated and so forth. So this has been failing on and on and on and off. All right. So 2013, there was massive failures. Our 2 academic institutions got the funding from FDA to do testing, right? FDA was testing these products. Guess what? They meet all specifications, they're bioequivalent. How can that happen? I can tell you this. In rush to file and accepting any silly specification FDA will throw at them, they have an approval. But India actually has the science to make the product meet specifications. But they can't use the process they registered, right? That's the reason they have manufacturing the batch records in that room, manufacturing the product in the other building. I'm not joking. That's the only way it can run. Otherwise, you don't have product. But they at least knew how to make the damn product to meet specification. And here, the FDA spokesperson has the gall not only to just say, oh, the product is company's own test. Who insisted on those tests? The regulatory affairs department said, oh, you may tighten that specification. Oh, yes, sir, how we will tighten it without even thinking what the ramifications will be. The reason I get upset with this is I took this discussion step by step to the highest level at FDA Science Board, to advisory committee. Nothing has changed. And if the system says we are science-based, sorry, I don't trust you. I don't. As a grandfather, I do not trust the system anymore. If I don't trust it, imagine what others will have. You can't fool me anymore. So here is an example of a product which is similar to coated bead tablets. So if you look at the exceptions, average cycle time is 95 days. Standard deviation across sample time is over 100 days. When standard deviation exceeds your average cycle time, it's a chaotic system. On the overall cycle times, Dr. Raju did not have the guts to put a number there. What's the cycle time? 600 days. Every of those batch is an illegal batch by definition, because you're supposed to resolve that in 30 days. And that is one of the top 10 companies. This is not a generic drug product. So in 2013, I'm in India. I'm looking at the data from metoprolol. It didn't hit me immediately, but it took some time. Oh, we are Six Sigma. We don't have any. I said, how can that be? How can you be so good? And guess what? FDA inspections have been going on for that company for 10 years. What is the value of that damn silly inspection? When an inspector doesn't know the iota of this is open. I said, what the hell am I doing here? I should have not left tobacco. That was an honest job for me. Really? I knew the product was back. I could enjoy it. I was in Switzerland. Why the hell did I come here? Now, this is being recorded, okay? After this, I will be canceled from Pharma. That's okay. I've already canceled myself. So dissolution has taught me a lot of things, okay? Dissolution became a metaphor for professional fragmentation and blind spots in pharmaceutical knowledge. Because after that Wyatt thing, I went and gave a keynote address at USP, Performance Testing and Pharmaceutical Quality in 2004. So you have that access to that. And then I also went back to USP to talk about this in 2015. At NIPT, we did a conference at 2017, I believe, so I didn't put that in. But then I wrote my sort of experience in that paper, the overall synthesis. I can criticize, but pointing fingers doesn't get us anywhere. What is the solution, right? So that's what I mean by that. I'm taking a development stance. I shared with you my passion, but that was my low order of consciousness, the nasty me. Not the grandfather me, but the younger me. As a grandfather, I have to find a common ground, find a solution. So I'll move to my grandfather mode now. Hopefully that will make a difference. So what's wrong with the system is our feedback loops don't work. Okay? There's no feedback because that's a market failure. Feedback loops, without feedback, you never improve, right? So this is a story which I will sometime later write as a novel probably. So this is 2017. One senior FDA member keeps calling me. I'm with NIPT. Oh, there's a problem with warfarin, FDA approval warfarin, okay? I said, what's the problem? Oh, it's the CMC reviewer don't know how to. I said, all right. If you're not going to blow the whistle, Professor Ken Morris, myself, and so forth, we organize ourselves. Let's do the research. What's wrong with narrow therapeutic index drugs? And essentially, we had a PhD student go through this. And it was Harsh Shah, physicochemical failure modes of narrow therapeutic index drugs. I'm not going to go through that. We screwed up. All we can think about is tighten the bio. One-time biostudy, and we even have a misunderstanding of 95% confidence interval. You know what 95% confidence interval means? That you have done 100 biostudies, then that means that value would be within that. Where do we do 100 biostudies? So I have a keynote address for the Statistical Society on 2003 on that, but that's a separate story. So we wrote a paper, new prior knowledge, said, look, we have old formulations, we never improve, the science has been improving, correct? We need to update our applications. Without that, we go in circles and circles and circles. So we wrote a paper, new prior knowledge, sent it to FDA, put it in the docket. Janet Rutberg did send me a nice note. Oh, this is very clever. But then we're at the same place. So we have a Procrustean problem. Procrustean is from Greek mythology. Professor Les Bennett used to come and yell at me a long time ago, 1995. I was working on the BCS guidance, and the rest of the group were working on population and individual bioequivalence criteria. So moving away from one-size-fits-all to a more specific risk-based approach. So Procrustean is one-size-fits-all, and he used to criticize, so that has remained with me. The Procrustean problem, one-size-fits-all, a barrier to flow. We punish what doesn't fit, or we then just fake it, including FDA. Flow can't happen in rigid frames. And I've been writing about such things since 2016. So if you go to my LinkedIn, you will see 300 plus, I keep writing. That's for my own development. So what are the challenges? We have built-in recalls. We underestimate the complexity of formulations, the physical attributes, the material science, excipients, physical attributes, and we have a mindset. Look, remember this. FDA, when you apply to FDA, you apply, where does a pharmaceutical appear in the law? It doesn't. Where is formulation? If you go to the FDA website, the elixir of sulfanilamide tragedy accelerated the FDA&C Act in 1928, correct? What does FDA call that? It calls it sulfanilamide tragedy. It can't mention elixir of sulfanilamide legally, because the law and doesn't, you have new drug application, and you have a drug master file, but actually it's a pharmaceutical application, which we never recognized. So pharmaceutical science, pharmaceutics, industrial pharmacy has never been recognized in the law. Whereas the tragedy in 1937 was an elixir of sulfanilamide tragedy. There was nothing wrong with sulfanilamide, the drug substance. So that's a blind spot that perpetuates. That's how it is written. So if you look at, when I used to be at FDA, I used to remember, file first was such a big deal. You would see limousines lining up outside FDA to file first, a long time ago. Huh? We have file first and figure it out later. Most CMC reviewers have no idea of formulation science. They are synthetic organic chemists. And if you are going to answer their complete response letter to develop your product, God help you. Blind leading the blind. I'm not joking, that's what it is. And as a result, so just to give you a sense, I dig through everything before I say anything. Because I say everything I wanted to say, but I have my evidence too. So if you want to look at the CMC review process, ANDA review process for the generic approval, FDA insisted on that silly dissolution test after the biostudy, after the development is complete. So essentially at the time of ANDA approval, you are going to be manufacturing to a specification you have never tested before. That's what happens. Failure built in. So all of this was happening, and then in 2013, as I told you, I got a chance to visit Dr. Woodcock, and FDA was struggling. What was FDA struggling with? Product recalls and defects unacceptably high. Inherent defects in product and process design. Current regulation, review, inspection practice tend to treat all products equally. Procrastination. All right. Anyway, I'm running out of time. So the generic system works at 40% efficiency at best. I'm not joking, okay? Half the ANDAs approved cannot be manufactured or marketed. I'm not joking, this is FDA data. So what I've done is, I got a 5-minute warning, so I quickly do this. As a grandfather, I want to focus on human development, professional development, right? And I'm taking process validation, quality by design that we talk about in the material world and apply it to human. So I'm doing that, and here's a case example of how to break the 2 to 3 sigma barrier by Amgen. In 2004, Amgen had the mindset, if I don't look, there's no problem. It's FDA approved, it's validated. If I don't look, there's no problem. That's most companies. Amgen decided that was not going to be their motto. And then they started going effective corrective action. But what it took for them to do that really speaks to maturity of people maturing the system. We work and live in the socio-technical systems. Maturity of our system is reflected on our maturity. Simple as that. Anyway, so smart tools is what I do a lot of mentoring and advising, right? So if I have a CEO and so forth, I use the SMART way of thinking. SMART acronym is a very useful acronym. It's very common. SMART objectives, something which is specific, relevant, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Simple. But it also, from a technology perspective, self-monitoring, reporting, transformations. I use that acronym to really think about, and the way I frame this is based on Dr. Deming's profound knowledge and Professor Keegan's at Harvard's constructive theory of adult human development. A lot of pharma companies have professional development programs for their staff at Harvard, so that comes from that. So anyway, I'll skip that. So I just want to share with you, the challenge is our order of consciousness is low. The point is what I'm making. We don't care what happens, what patients think. But as we are patients now, so we have to start thinking from a patient perspective. And our system has blind spots, because if you look at when you do a placebo-controlled clinical trials for originator, same color, same thing, right? But when we approve a generic drug, we can't have that because the trade secret, and so we'll never have a generic if you have the color. Remember the purple pill with Dr. Reddy's? So we have to work around those blind spots. And we were at the precipice in 2017. In fact, Bloomberg said generic market in chaos. Generic pill color changes affect medication adherence. Suffocating silence, and fed up with drug companies, hospitals decide to start their own. Now there are many hospital systems that have done that. Where we are, I think we have to start thinking about pharmaceutical harm reduction is a very different way of thinking, a more careful way of thinking. That's what we have applied for tobacco. So I think we will have to adopt that. And what I also want to say that we have everything written up as guidances, as policies, procedures, but what we know and what we apply are two different things. Okay? So for example, process validation guideline 2011 really holds all the answers. And if FDA really enforces that, half of the industry will have to shut down. They're not ready. I want to warn you, process validation is not just a guidance. It's a regulatory requirement. It's part of the law. FDA has held back its enforcement on that. And this type of warning letter by Karthik Iyer in 2004 was a trial balloon. If FDA enforces that, half of the companies, half of the controlled release products will be in trouble. I think it's coming. Minding the gap, I think what I want to say is the US healthcare system is the third leading cause of death. That was 2014, okay? I'm not joking. It's number one now. 2019, the National Academies of Science, Engineering, Medicine came up with this proposal. A design thinking systems approach is absolutely necessary. That's what we have been trying to do with quality by design, PAT, and systems approach. So we were on the right track. We have been ignoring the maturity model. Professional development, you really need to have the stage of professional development, which is important, is you have to be self-authored to be able to start appreciating system. So self-authorship becomes a way to do this. And this is Professor Keegan's work. So adults continue to develop, but at different rate. Most adults get stuck in the socialized mind, number three, third order of consciousness. Most CEOs that we promote are imperialist. I'm not joking. So we have imperialist, Procrustean people becoming CEOs and presidents. That's the problem. You really have to be self-transforming. Unless you improve, be the change. That's simple, but this is based on evidence now. So I'll simply skip. FD&C Act actually says scientific training and experience to make effectiveness decisions fairly and responsibly. We have the words in the law or the regulation, but we have not practiced it. So we are in a moment we are in. I think this is the recent article I wrote for Outsourced Pharma. Pharmaceutical sovereignty is no longer a theoretical concern, but an urgent national imperative. We better get ready, because otherwise we will have shortages and so forth. Yesterday, after the executive order, Marty McCurry announced, FDA announces expanded use of unannounced inspections. Step into it. Yeah. Anyway, that will shut down the supply anyway. So final reflection. The maturity model for smart factory, which is the one below, pre-digital, digital silos, connected plant, predictive plant, and adaptive plant. Adaptive plant means you're responding to the feedback and adapting. Adaptive learning is learning from experience. So where we are is the stages of adult human development or maturity, and what we will need in smart factory just line up perfectly right. The question really is whether humans will qualify. As a grandfather, what I can tell you is I want a human-free manufacturing system. I don't want any humans in my medicine my child takes. AI. I'm just joking. So, but remember, all models are wrong. Some are useful. And I will end here. I write quite a bit. From intermittent to flow, knowledge can't be taught, but must be felt, experienced together. In our pursuit of knowledge, I think flowing knowledge is not transferred, it is co-experience. I hope you experienced something similar to mine. If we did, then some progress today. Thank you.